Well, so who loses it? Who loses it during the dress rehearsal and is in my face with tears coming down her eyes trying to stifle her laughter? And it's, the whole concept is we're playing password.
Ever seen a moment so funny it had to be scripted, only to find out it was 100% real? Even contagious.
I go around circling, like that. That's why I thought it was so laughable at the time.
That's exactly what happened on the Carol Burnett Show in a blooper so legendary, fans still can't stop replaying it. With its perfect humor of timing, chaos, and genuine laughter, the scene proves that sometimes the best comedy happens when things go hilariously wrong. And no, it wasn't edited, not even cut, at all. Take a closer look, because what unfolded was pure, unfiltered TV magic. Plus, we'll give you more fun bloopers after that. The Elephant Story. If you've ever seen the Carol Burnett Show, you know that half the fun wasn't just the skits. It was watching the cast try not to completely fall apart laughing. And out of all the hilarious moments that ever happened on that stage, there's one blooper that stands above the rest. It wasn't planned, it wasn't rehearsed, and they didn't even try to edit it out. That moment, the now iconic Elephant Story told by Tim Conway during the Mama's Family sketch. Here's the setup. The family's sitting around the table, talking and arguing in typical fashion, with Carol Burnett as Eunice, Vicki Lawrence as Mama, and the great Tim Conway as Mickey, a quiet, slightly odd relative who doesn't talk much until he does. The sketch is already funny, but then, out of nowhere, Tim Conway decides to go completely off script. He starts telling this bizarre, meandering story about a circus elephant and a trainer who performed an unusual trick. The thing is, this wasn't in the script. Not one word. He just launches into it, and what follows is absolute comedic chaos. You can actually see the exact moment when the rest of the cast realizes that Tim is doing something totally unexpected. Carol tries to stay in character, but she starts covering her face with her hand and shaking. Vicki Lawrence bites her lip, staring down at the table, clearly trying not to lose it. Even Dick Van Dyke, who was sitting in for Harvey Korman in that episode, can barely hold it together. It's not just what Tim is saying, although, let's be real, the idea of a Siamese twin elephant act is insane. It's how he's saying it. Totally deadpan, with this slow southern drawl, like he's telling the most normal story in the world. What makes this blooper truly legendary is that the cast could not recover. They let it roll. Tim just keeps going, adding absurd detail after absurd detail, improvising the most ridiculous story ever told on network television. At one point, Carol turns away completely, shoulders shaking with laughter. Dick has his face buried in his hand. But the cherry on top? Vicki Lawrence, after nearly 5 straight minutes of everyone falling apart, delivers a single unscripted line so deadpan and perfectly timed that it completely destroys the entire room. "Are you sure that little asshole's through?" The audience loses it. The cast collapses. That line wasn't supposed to happen either. It just came out of sheer desperation to end the madness. And they didn't cut a single second. It aired just like that. No fancy editing, no reshoots, just raw, unfiltered comedy gold that somehow got past the censors. This scene has since become the gold standard for live bloopers. It's shared online again and again with captions like, "The funniest thing ever on TV," and honestly, they're not wrong. It's the kind of moment you couldn't plan if you tried. It showed not just how talented the cast was, but how much fun they had doing it. That kind of chemistry, that freedom to improvise and break character, is what made the Carol Burnett Show legendary in the first place. The show's bloopers are the stuff of legend, And though Tim Conway's elephant story may be the crown jewel, it wasn't the only time things went hilariously off the rails. Here are 5 other notable bloopers that still have audiences cracking up decades later. Unlimited goofs. One of the most famous and completely unscripted bloopers came during a sketch where Tim Conway plays an inexperienced dentist working on Harvey Korman. The scene was supposed to be funny, but what made it legendary was Tim's improv. He starts injecting himself with Novocaine by accident, first numbing his hand, then his leg, and eventually collapsing onto Harvey. Korman was trying so hard not to laugh that he nearly pulled a muscle in his face, but he couldn't hold it together. At one point, you can see him biting down on his tongue, gripping the dentist chair and shaking uncontrollably. The way Tim keeps playing it totally straight while physically flopping around the set makes it even funnier. The fact that they didn't stop filming and just let it happen is what made this sketch so timeless. This one technically wasn't a blooper in the traditional sense, but the reaction it got from the cast certainly was. In a parody of Gone with the Wind, Carol's character appears at the top of the stairs wearing an elaborate curtain dress, with the curtain rod still attached across her shoulders. The costume itself was so unexpected that the audience roared with laughter before she even said a word. But what made it even better was Carol's own reaction to the audience's eruption. She paused, gave a now famous sideways glance, and casually delivered the line, "I saw it in the window, and I just couldn't resist."
Thank you. I saw it in the window and I just couldn't resist it.
The whole cast was losing it off stage, and even Carol had to fight not to laugh. It was a rare moment where the costume stole the show, and the blooper was everyone's inability to recover from it. Tim had a habit of derailing sketches with bizarre stories, and another standout moment came during a Mama's Family sketch. Yes, again, when he started telling a long-winded tale about Siamese twin dogs. Not in the script, not rehearsed, just Tim doing what he did best. Absolute nonsense, delivered with a straight face. Carol Burnett, Vicki Lawrence, and the rest of the cast tried to hold it together, but Tim's absurd story about the dogs being connected at the rear was too much. You can hear the audience howling in the background, and Carol literally hides her face to avoid showing how hard she's laughing. The cameras kept rolling, the cast kept cracking, and Tim never broke once. That was the magic of his comedy, and why this unscripted moment is still a favorite. Harvey Korman had a signature trait on the show. He couldn't stop laughing. In almost every sketch with Tim Conway, Harvey would inevitably break character and start giggling, often uncontrollably. One particularly memorable example was during a sketch where Tim plays a Nazi officer interrogating a prisoner, Harvey. But instead of a serious tone, Tim keeps making ridiculous jokes and noises. Harvey tries so hard to stay in character, but it's clear from the tears in his eyes that he's losing it. At one point, he actually turns away from the camera just to get his face under control. The blooper wasn't one specific moment. It was Harvey's sheer inability to handle Tim's unpredictability, and it became something fans watched for. The show embraced the breaking character as part of its charm. In another sketch gone wonderfully wrong, Tim Conway plays a general giving chaotic orders to a group of confused soldiers, one of whom is named Will. The line, "Fire at will," was meant as a command, but Conway turns it into a misunderstanding. The moment he shouts the order, a soldier grabs Will and starts dragging him away. The timing was so perfect, and the cast's reaction so genuine, that it became clear. This was totally improvised. You can see the actors trying to reset, but the laughter keeps creeping in. What was supposed to be a quick gag turned into a full-on blooper moment, complete with muffled laughs, broken lines, and glorious confusion. It was another example of how spontaneity gave the show its unique flavor. What made these bloopers so special wasn't just that they were funny. It was that they showed the human side of comedy. No matter how rehearsed or scripted a sketch was supposed to be, the cast of The Carol Burnett Show always left room for surprise. And when things went off the rails, they didn't cut and redo it. They leaned in, laughed, and let the audience enjoy it right along with them. These bloopers have stood the test of time because they remind us that sometimes the best comedy comes when nobody's sticking to the script. The success of the series, premiering in 1967 and running for 11 seasons, it wasn't just another variety show, it was the variety show. It had sketch comedy, musical numbers, hilarious characters, and a cast with chemistry that made every episode feel like a party you were invited to. The show broke new ground, gave people a reason to laugh every week, and became a staple of American television. But beyond just its success in terms of ratings and awards, it was a show people truly loved, and still do. The warmth, humor, and creativity that poured out of every sketch made it something special, something timeless. Part of the magic came from Carol Burnett herself. She wasn't just the star, she was the heart of the whole thing. Carol had this incredible way of being completely goofy one second and incredibly sincere the next. She was never afraid to look silly, fall down, make weird faces, or play oddball characters. And at the same time, she connected with the audience on a personal level. That signature ear tug at the end of every show,
I'm so glad we had this time together, just to have a laugh or sing a song.
a nod to her grandmother, a sweet personal tradition that fans came to expect. Carol made people feel like they knew her, like she was part of their family. That kind of connection is rare, and it made her show feel intimate, even though it was broadcast to millions. Another reason the show worked so well was the cast. Carol surrounded herself with incredibly talented and versatile performers: Harvey Korman, Vicki Lawrence, Tim Conway, and later Lyle Waggoner. Each one brought something different to the table. Tim Conway, in particular, had a gift for improvising and throwing his co-stars completely off track in the best way possible. Watching Harvey Korman try not to break character as Tim went off the rails became a fan-favorite part of the show. Their laughter was real, and that made it all the more fun to watch. You could tell these people truly enjoyed working together. That joy was contagious. The sketches themselves were brilliant. The writing was sharp, original, and filled with physical comedy, parodies, and clever wordplay. One of the most famous recurring sketches, The Family, introduced the world to Eunice and Mama, a dysfunctional mother-daughter duo that was both hilarious and painfully relatable. The show also spoofed popular movies, TV shows, and celebrities, always with a wink and a laugh. Everyone remembers the Gone with the Wind parody, where Carol walks down the stairs wearing a curtain rod.
Come on, when Harvey says, "I love that dress, the gown is gorgeous," and I say, "I saw it in the window and I just couldn't resist it," it was a brilliant line.
Still attached to the drapes, one of the most iconic sight gags in TV history. These sketches weren't just funny, they were smart, well-acted, and perfectly timed. The format of the show also played a big role in its success. It was a variety show in the truest sense: singing, dancing, comedy, celebrity guests. It had it all, but it never felt disjointed or random. Everything flowed, and it felt like the cast was inviting the audience into their fun little world each week. There was a sense of spontaneity, too. Carol often did live Q&A segments at the start of the show, talking to real audience members, cracking jokes, and sometimes getting surprisingly heartfelt. That kind of unscripted connection is almost unheard of today, but it worked perfectly here because Carol made it genuine. Timing also played a role. The late 60s through the 70s was a time of a lot of social and political upheaval. People were dealing with war, protests, civil rights struggles, and cultural shifts. In the middle of all that, the Carol Burnett Show offered something comforting and familiar. It didn't ignore the real world, but it gave people a break from it. It reminded them that it was okay to laugh, that joy and silliness were still important. That's why so many people who watched the show as kids or young adults still talk about it with such affection today. It was a bright spot in uncertain times. And then there's the legacy. Even decades after it went off the air, the Carol Burnett Show is still talked about, rewatched, and celebrated. It paved the way for so many comedy shows and performers that came after. Saturday Night Live, Mad TV, sketch comedy in general, so much of it owes a debt to what Carol and her team were doing back then. It showed that a woman could lead a comedy show, command a stage, and be the funniest person in the room. That influence is immeasurable. So why is the Carol Burnett Show still loved after all these years? It's simple, really. It was funny, heartfelt, creative, and real. It made people laugh in a way that felt wholesome and warm, and it brought joy to living rooms all across America. Carol Burnett and her cast didn't just put on a show, they created something magical that stuck with people. That's the kind of success you can't measure in ratings alone. That's the kind of love that lasts, because, of course, it was extended. The continuation. In the fall of 1977, while the Carol Burnett Show was still running on primetime television, the show's best comedy sketches from earlier seasons were repackaged into a new half-hour series called Carol Burnett and Friends. These edited episodes, mostly featuring material from 1972 to 1977, became a big hit in syndication and stayed on the air for many years, keeping the show's legacy alive even after the original run ended. Then, in the spring of 1979, about a year after the show had officially wrapped up, Carol Burnett and her husband, Joe Hamilton, were out having dinner with friends, including Tim Conway. During the conversation, Carol started reminiscing about the show and daydreaming about sketches she wished they were still doing. Inspired by her enthusiasm, Hamilton suggested doing a short summer version of the show. CBS wasn't interested. They had already filled their summer schedule, but ABC jumped at the idea. So that summer, Carol Burnett and Company was born. It premiered and aired for 4 episodes. The format was nearly identical to the original show, with classic sketches like Mr. Tudball and Mrs. Wiggins, The Family, and As the Stomach Turns. Carol even revived her hilarious impersonation of Queen Elizabeth II. Since Harvey Korman was unavailable, ironically, he was under contract with ABC after leaving the Carol Burnett Show in 1977, 2 new comedic actors, Kenneth Mars and Craig Richard Nelson, were brought in to join regulars Vicki Lawrence and Tim Conway. Choreographer Ernie Flatt didn't return either. Instead, lead dancer Don Crichton took over those duties. The guest stars during this brief run included Cheryl Ladd, Alan Arkin, Penny Marshall, and Sally Field. The show received positive reviews, and ratings were solid enough that people expected it to return every summer. Unfortunately, that never happened. In 1980, Joe Hamilton produced The Tim Conway Show, a similar variety-style program starring Tim Conway. Much of the team from Carol Burnett and Company carried over. Later in the run, Harvey Korman even joined Conway as co-host. Sadly, the show didn't last long and wrapped up in 1981. One of the most beloved recurring sketches from the Carol Burnett Show was The Family, which focused on the hilariously dysfunctional Harper family. It was so popular that in 1982, CBS produced a made-for-TV movie called Eunice, starring Carol Burnett, Harvey Korman, Vicki Lawrence, Betty White, and Ken Berry. The movie's success led to a full spin-off sitcom, Mama's Family, which starred Vicki Lawrence and ran from 1983 to 1990. Carol and Harvey occasionally reprised their roles as Eunice and Ed Higgins, although Carol's appearances were limited, partly due to her divorce from producer Joe Hamilton. During the show's early run, Korman also played the narrator, Alastair Quince, a parody of Masterpiece Theater's host, and directed over 30 episodes. In 1990, NBC launched a new show called Carol and Company, where Carol Burnett returned to TV with a half-hour comedy anthology series. Each week, a new story and characters were featured. The ensemble cast included now familiar names like Peter Krause, Jeremy Piven, Richard Kind, and Megan Fay. The show found moderate success and was renewed for a second season, eventually ending in 1991. That same year, CBS gave The Carol Burnett Show another shot with a short-lived revival. The new version featured some of the same cast from Carol and Company, along with newcomers like Chris Barnes, Roger Kabler, and Jessica Lundy. Unfortunately, the show didn't click with audiences. Comedy had changed by the early 90s, becoming edgier and more irreverent, while Burnett's style remained rooted in character-driven, wholesome humor. Only 6 episodes aired before it was canceled. Even after all those attempts to revive the magic, the original sketches kept finding new homes. In 1996, reruns of the syndicated Carol Burnett and Friends aired on the Family Channel, and from 2004 to 2005, TV Land picked them up as well. Since January 2015, the show has been airing on MeTV in late-night slots, bringing Carol and her gang back into living rooms night after night. Interestingly, the earlier seasons of The Carol Burnett Show, from 1967, hadn't been included in the original syndication package. But in April 2019, MeTV began airing those episodes for the first time, finally giving fans access to some of the show's earliest and most classic material. Thanks to her extensive career and particularly the impact of her television show, Burnett was honored with the Kennedy Center Honors in 2003 and received the Mark Twain Prize for American Humor in October 2013. In 2009, TV Guide ranked the episode Went with the Wind as number 53 on its list of the 100 greatest episodes. On September 13, 2016, Burnett published a memoir about her show titled In Such Good Company, 11 Years of Laughter, Mayhem, and Fun in the Sandbox. Filled with behind-the-scenes stories from the 1967-1978 variety series, the book details how the show came to be, how she chose her co-stars, a co-star she briefly let go before rehiring, and many of the show's unforgettable characters. The audiobook version, narrated by Burnett herself, earned a Grammy Award for Best Spoken Word Album. Casts Then and Now. Just saying the name of the show brings a smile to the face of anyone who grew up with television in the 60s and 70s. It was one of those rare shows that wasn't just funny, it was magic. A mix of slapstick, satire, sketch comedy, and musical numbers. It stood out because of its warm-hearted humor and the extraordinary chemistry among its cast. Carol Burnett herself led the charge with her unmistakable charm, but the entire cast was a powerhouse of comedic talent. They weren't just co-workers, they felt like a family, both on screen and off. And what's more amazing is how the impact of that show still echoes today, with reruns, YouTube clips, and interviews keeping their legacy alive. So let's take a look at each of the main cast members, who they were on the show, what made them so special, and what paths their lives took after the curtain fell. Carol Burnett, of course, was the beating heart of the show. With her signature ear tug and infectious laugh, she became a household name and a pioneer for women in comedy. What made Carol truly special was her range. She could go from playing a bumbling cleaning lady to a glamorous diva to a heartfelt character in a dramatic sketch, all within one episode. And then there were the musical numbers. Her voice could rival any Broadway performer's. Carol wasn't just the host. She was a brilliant comedian and actress with a deep sense of timing and empathy. After the show ended in 1978, she didn't slow down. She starred in several films, most notably Annie in 1982, as the hilariously evil Miss Hannigan. She returned to TV many times over the years, had her own variety specials, and even stepped into the world of drama with guest appearances on shows like Law and Order, SVU, and Better Call Saul. In recent years, she starred in Palm Royale 2024 on Apple TV+, proving she's still got it. At 91, she remains a beloved figure in Hollywood, admired for her generosity, humility, and groundbreaking work. It's not an exaggeration to say that without Carol Burnett, there might not be a Tina Fey or Kristen Wiig today. Harvey Korman was Carol's right-hand man, the ultimate straight man in sketch comedy. Though he was so much more than that. He had this regal presence, a voice that could sound pompous or silly depending on the role, and he was known for cracking up during sketches, especially if Tim Conway was involved. Harvey had a background in classical acting, and you could tell. He brought a theatrical flair to every character he played, from the condescending butler to the clueless husband. One of his most iconic roles was in the recurring The Family sketches, where he played the long-suffering husband Ed opposite Vicki Lawrence's mama. After the show ended, Harvey continued his comedy partnership with Tim Conway, touring together for years and producing video specials that kept their comedic flame alive. He also had standout roles in Mel Brooks's films like Blazing Saddles and High Anxiety, where his ability to play the villainous or hapless character was used to brilliant effect. Harvey passed away in 2008 at the age of 81, but he left behind a treasure trove of performances that still bring laughter to every generation. Tim Conway. What can you even say about Tim without immediately starting to laugh? He was the king of physical comedy, the prankster on set, and the cast member most likely to derail a sketch by making everyone else crack up. But what set Tim apart was that his humor was never mean-spirited. It came from a place of joy and playfulness. One of his most famous bits was the elephant story during a sketch in which Vicki and Harvey completely lost it. And who could forget his elderly man character with the excruciatingly slow walk? Tim didn't need words to make you laugh. His body language was enough. After the Carol Burnett Show, he had a solo series, The Tim Conway Show, starred in a few movies and did a lot of voice work. He voiced Barnacle Boy in SpongeBob SquarePants, which introduced him to a whole new generation. Tim also continued working with Harvey for years in comedy sketches and on stage. Sadly, he passed away in 2019 at age 85, but his legacy as one of the funniest men in television history is set in stone. He was the guy who could make the entire cast break character, and that's saying something. Vicki Lawrence was the youngest member of the main cast, practically discovered by Carol Burnett herself after Vicki sent her a fan letter and a picture showing their uncanny resemblance. Carol invited her to audition, and the rest is history. Vicki quickly grew from a supporting player to a standout star in her own right, most famously with her role as Thelma Harper, aka Mama. That character, grumpy, brutally honest, and surprisingly sharp, became so popular it spun off into its own sitcom, Mama's Family, which ran for several seasons. But Vicki wasn't just a one-character actress. She could hold her own in any sketch, whether playing a ditzy Southern belle or a tough-talking waitress. She also had a successful music career. Her song, The Night the Lights Went Out in Georgia, hit #1 in 1973. After the show, she kept busy with acting, talk shows, and comedy tours. In recent years, she's stayed connected with fans on social media and even revived Mama for live performances. Vicky remains sharp, funny, and fiercely proud of her roots on The Carol Burnett Show, which launched her into a lifelong career in entertainment. Lyle Waggoner was the eye candy of the group, tall, dashing, and always in on the joke. He wasn't just a pretty face, though. He had great comedic instincts and played the straight man with a wink. His role often involved being the handsome guy in a sketch, but he had enough self-awareness to poke fun at himself, which made him incredibly likable. Lyle left the show in 1974, but stayed in the public eye with a role on the Wonder Woman TV series opposite Linda Carter. Later in life, he made a surprising pivot. He launched a business providing trailers and dressing rooms for film productions, and it became hugely successful. Though he stepped away from acting, he remained a pop culture icon for fans of vintage TV. Lyle passed away in 2020 at the age of 84, but he's still fondly remembered not just for his looks, but for his warmth and presence on the show. Dick Van Dyke, while not a regular, deserves an honorable mention because of his guest appearances and natural fit with the cast. Already a comedy legend thanks to The Dick Van Dyke Show, he brought his trademark physicality and easygoing humor whenever he dropped in on Carol's show. His chemistry with Carol was undeniable. They shared a mutual respect and admiration that translated beautifully on screen. Fast forward to today, Dick is still going strong well into his 90s. In fact, in 2024, he reunited with Carol Burnett for a special handprint ceremony in Hollywood, a touching moment that reminded everyone of their incredible legacy. Dick's appearance in Mary Poppins Returns at age 91 left audiences cheering, proving once again that true talent and joy doesn't age. Where are they now? Some have sadly left us, but their spirits remain strong in the reruns, DVDs, and countless YouTube clips that still bring in millions of views. Carol Burnett continues to inspire younger generations and remains an icon of comedy and grace. Vicki Lawrence is still active, still hilarious, and still proud to be Mama. And though Harvey, Tim, and Lyle are no longer with us, their work continues to make people laugh decades after the fact. That's the power of The Carol Burnett Show, timeless, joyful, and bursting with love for the craft. It wasn't just a show, it was a family. And for anyone who watched it, it feels like home. Thanks for sticking until the end of the video. Subscribe to the channel for more uploads.